So we've all got a lot of spare time on our hands right now, and what better to do with that copious free time than write a few rituals for when you can finally get your coven, grove, hearth or group back together. So I've got a few tips for you. So you've started writing a ritual and you're staring at your blank piece of paper or your blank Word document and you're thinking, I don't know where to start. So, the first thing to do is to get yourself in the mood by reading other rituals around the same theme. So, assuming you're writing a ritual for a festival, then you want to read a ritual about the festival. You might want to listen to some podcasts or read some poetry or listen to some music, or maybe look at paintings which are based on the theme of that season or the theme of your ritual. And once you've decided what it is your ritual is about, the next thing you want to do is to, say we're doing a ritual for Beltane, you want to think about what are the key themes of Beltane. So typically people will go for fertility, but you might find that's not suitable for your group. So you might decide you're going to do creativity or love in all its various beautiful forms. And once you've got your key theme for your ritual, you then want to tease out a few key ideas that come from that. So let's say we're talking about creativity. You might say, okay, what kind of creativity? Artistic, musical, literary, maybe do some kitchen witchery, whatever it happens to be. So that will generate some key ideas for your ritual. You then want to think about some symbols that you're going to have in your ritual to make it come together as a coherent whole. And it's generally recommended that you stick to somewhere between 3 and 7 symbols. And the simple reason is that the human memory is generally keyed to remember 5 things, because we have 5 fingers, and that's 5 fingers plus or minus 2. Okay, so somewhere between 3 and 7 symbols that are going to be in your ritual. Then you want to think about the speaking parts in your ritual, and given that quite often people don't show up or you get more people than you were expecting, it's a good idea to be flexible around the speaking parts. So when you're writing, it's a good idea to say, okay, could this bit be divvied up between 2 different people, or could these 2 parts be amalgamated into one? And you want to make sure that you've got something for everyone. So some people will suit smaller parts because they're less confident, and other people will want more complicated stuff. Okay, so think about the group of people you're actually writing for when you're writing. Another very important thing is whether or not your ritual should rhyme. Rhyme is useful in some ways in that your right brain likes rhyme. It likes rhythm, assonance. So assonance is where you have a repetition of consonants that go together. So and then you might want to stick to a particular meter, but you probably only want to do rhyme for spells and things that require the participation of the deep mind. It's better to have good prose than bad rhyme, and there are numerous examples of bad rhyme out there that we don't want to emulate. So the other thing you want to do is when you've written your piece of prose or your rhyme, you want to break it up into manageable chunks so that you put a line break where there's a natural pause in the speaking. Then the other thing you want to think about is practical considerations. So if I'm trying to hold 3 different candles and an athame and a chalice, and I don't know, I've got like some really enormous robe on or something, then I'm not going to be able to do that because I've only got 2 arms. So very important to think, okay, am I giving my participants too many props? Am I giving them too many things to think about at the same time? So one of the things is when you're calling a quarter, it's a good idea to just focus on the energy of the quarter first and then say the words. And then if you're doing fancy things with pentagrams, do that last. So rather than trying to do all three of those things at once, because the human brain cannot cope with doing multiple things at the same time. Okay, it's also a good idea to make a props list, because there's nothing worse than getting into the temple and casting the circle and calling the quarters and then going, oh my god, we forgot the wand, or oh my god, we forgot the cakes and wine, or the salt and water, or whatever it happens to be. Another important consideration is health and safety. If you're going to do a big dance around your temple, have you got a dangerous, scary rug that you could trip over and spill the contents of your flaming cauldron and set fire to the temple, and then everyone's trapped in your basement? Not a good idea. So always make sure that you've got good ventilation, that there's definitely a fire escape route, and that you've got ways of making sure that everyone is safe and well in your circle. Another thing that's good to make is a list of the dramatis personae, as they call it in the theatre, which is a list of all the characters, and then you can put names against who's going to play those individual characters. And once you've written your ritual and got it all planned out, the next thing you've got to do is read it aloud to yourself. Does it flow properly? Does it sound weird, or does it sound okay? Are there unfamiliar words in it that your participants will be unable to pronounce? If there's a deity name that they've never heard before, chances are they might not be able to pronounce it. If I had $1 for every single person I'd met who couldn't pronounce Jeshul and wanted to pronounce it Deosil, I'd be quite rich. And then another thing to think about is when you're doing invocations, you want to leave space for the deity to speak. So you're going to have a written invocation in your ritual, but you want to say the invocation and then let the deity speak through the invokee, unless that's not part of your tradition, of course. And also really important is allowing for serendipity in your ritual, so giving people a chance to extemporize. So you may have written the most beautiful script you've ever seen, but that might not speak to your participants, and they might have a bit of creativity bubbling up from somewhere, and they might want to say their own words. So as well as having your set words, just give those opportunities for creativity, for example when calling the quarters or speaking to the deities or whatever it happens to be. And just make sure that everybody has a chance to participate and nobody feels uncomfortable, because that's the key thing when you're doing a ritual. You want to give people a good experience and make them feel safe and empowered and happy and spiritually fulfilled, if you're lucky. So that's quite a lot of information. It's quite a tall order to get all of that right, and you're not going to get it right the very first time. But hopefully I've given you some tips to avoid the most common pitfalls. And of course there's plenty of time to practice ritual on your own while you're in quarantine and self-isolation, and maybe do some virtual rituals over Zoom or Skype or whatever your preferred communication tool is. So stay safe and well out there, everybody, and thank you very much, and blessed be.